Let's study venous thromboembolism. In venous thromboembolism, it consists of pulmonary embolism and DVT, that is deep vein thrombosis. 1 to 2 patients in every 1000 admissions get venous thromboembolism as per the reported records, which involves both pulmonary embolism and DVT. Risk factors for venous thromboembolism, most important is prior history of VTE, that is venous thromboembolism. So whenever patient comes to you, you need to ask about the previous history. Other risk factors are immobilization for more than 3 days or surgery within 4 weeks, hemoptysis, cancer, pregnancy or postpartum state, or use of estrogen, history of stroke, thrombophilias or age above 50 years. Now coming to pathophysiology of pulmonary embolism. In pulmonary embolism, there is thrombus partially or completely obstructing the pulmonary arterial circulation, which causes ventilation perfusion mismatch, ultimately leading to increase in pulmonary arterial pressure, which leads to acute right ventricular failure, dilation and failure, finally causes decrease in coronary perfusion pressure. If this is the case, the patient presents with sudden onset of unexplained dyspnea because there is VQ mismatch. On auscultation, chest is usually clear. Pleuritic type of chest pain may or may not be present. And there might be also the history of DVT, that is unilateral limb swelling, that you have to check. If at all patient has massive emboli, then the patient presents with acute RV failure, that is right ventricular failure, obstructive shock, circulatory arrest, which is catastrophic and leads to cardiovascular collapse. That time the patient usually presents with syncope. Coming to diagnosis. Now, as we have seen the clinical features of pulmonary embolism, we also need to diagnose it. One is based on ECG. On ECG, there might be tachycardia, right axis deviation, right bundle branch block, S1, Q3, T3, which is most famously told, T-wave inversion in anterior leads. When there is T-wave inversion in anterior leads, you also need to consider other differentials. If there is T-wave inversion in anterior leads, it means it's a big PE. Other differentials are Wellens or SH, that is subarachnoid hemorrhage. If it is Wellens, patient don't have active history of chest pain. If it is SAH, usually the history is of thunderclap headache or difference in size of the pupils. So you tell patient to have PE if Wellens, SAH are ruled out well. Other thing on ECG is ST elevation in AVR, but ST elevation is also seen in MI. So you need to take a proper history to rule out MI and then conclude the patient to have PE. Cardiac USG shows RV dilatation, RV hypokinesia, which is seen as D sign or McConnell sign. Other features are paradoxical septal motion, dilated IVC with no respiratory collapse, and TR, that is tricuspid regurgitation. Now, as we have diagnosed it, we also need to know the approach, how to approach the patient. Once the patient has come to you, you are suspecting DVT or pulmonary embolism. Assess clinical likelihood, that is your clinical judgment on how likely patient has DVT or PE. Then based on your clinical judgment, either patient has DVT or PE. If at all you think patient has DVT, then you need to think again whether patient actually has high risk of DVT or no. If you still feel that patient don't have clinical features suggestive of DVT, then you get a D-dimer done. If D-dimer is normal, then patient don't have DVT. But if D-dimer is high, then you have to do imaging test to rule out DVT. If at all your suspicion of DVT is low, that is unable to rule out, then again you will get an imaging test done. So step 1 approach is first clinical assessment, then you think whether DVT or PE. Then comes step 2 approach, that is if at all you think patient has pulmonary embolism, you need to rule out by pulmonary embolism rule out criteria. If patient don't fit in any of those 9 criteria, then you can say that patient don't have PE. But if at all in pulmonary embolism rule out criteria, patient shouldn't have any of those features. If patient turns out to be something opposite, then you can label as one of the features of PE. So as pulmonary embolism you don't have that much high suspicion to call it as pulmonary embolism, get D-dimer done. If it is normal, then there is no DVT, so less likely to be pulmonary embolism as well. But if D-dimer is high, then you have to do imaging study to tell whether patient has PE or no. Or if your pulmonary embolism suspicion is very high, then still you will get imaging done to label whether patient has pulmonary embolism or no. So step 3 approach is this. Then as you are getting the imaging done, get chest CT done, that is CTPA. If that is diagnosed, that is CTPA is telling that patient has pulmonary embolism, done, your diagnosis is done, patient has pulmonary embolism. But if your CTPA is not telling clearly whether patient has pulmonary embolism or no, or if it is unavailable due to some reason or unsafe, example in pregnancy, you are not supposed to do CTPA, that time the next thing you do is get the lung scan done. So in lung scan, if it is diagnosed of pulmonary embolism, wow, patient has pulmonary embolism. But if it is non-diagnostic, then you'll have to get venous ultrasound done. It's like you're thinking of everything but not getting anything, then finally you think, oh, patient might have DVT, so let's think about DVT. So that time you'll do venous ultrasound. If that is positive, it means patient has DVT, then treat him or her as pulmonary embolism. But if that is also negative, means you have thought of every sort of thing, but still that is also negative, then you will do transesophageal echo or MR or invasive pulmonary angiography to see finally that whether patient fits into pulmonary embolism. Then comes important scorings, what we need to know. Okay, first is Wells score for pulmonary embolism. Wells score, first, signs and symptoms of DVT. If patient has signs and symptoms of DVT, score is of 3. Or alternative diagnosis is less likely to be PE, again score of 3. That is, your clinical judgment is going more towards PE or features are suggestive of DVT. That itself gives you a total score of 6. So anything if score is more than 4, more likely to be PE. If less than 4, less likely to be PE. So anyway, the DVT and your clinical judgment gives the score of 3. Other things are if heart rate is more than 100 or there is immobilization for more than 3 days or surgery within 4 weeks or there is prior history of pulmonary embolism or DVT, again score of 1.5. Then last is hemoptysis and cancer. If that is there, that is score of 1. This is important. Pulmonary embolism rule out criteria. If all 9 factors must be present to exclude pulmonary embolism. This you don't have to memorize, just it's opposite of Wells score. So in first thing will be if clinical judgment is only low, that is clinical low probability. So less likely to be pulmonary embolism. Then what all you studied in Wells score, just do opposite of it, that is pulmonary embolism rule out criteria. We studied signs and symptoms of DVT if patient has score of 3. So here you don't have the signs and symptoms of DVT, that will exclude. Just opposite of pulmonary embolism, that is prior VT history, no prior VT history, no unilateral leg swelling, heart rate less than 100, saturation more than 94% on room air, no surgery within 4 weeks, require endotracheal or epidural anesthesia, no hemoptysis. Extra 2 things you need to remember is no estrogen use and age less than 50 years. This is something which is not there in Wells score. Otherwise rest all features are just opposite to well score. One more scoring system you need to know, this revised Geneva score for PE. So just you should know this scoring exists, that revised Geneva score for PE. How in well score, less than 4 is low risk, more than 4 is high risk. Similarly in Geneva, revised Geneva score 0 to 3 is low, 4 to 10 is moderate, and more than 11 is or equal to 11 is high risk. So revised Geneva score for PE, there is age more than 65, score of 1, previous venous thromboembolism, score of 3, surgery requiring anesthesia or fracture of lower limb in past month, again score of 2, active malignancy, score of 2, unilateral leg pain, score of 3, hemoptysis, score of 2, pain on lower limb, deep vein palpation, score of 4 with unilateral leg edema, heart rate 75 to 94 beats per minute, score of 3, more than 95 beats per minute, score of 5. Now coming to pulmonary embolism management, first you do the risk stratification. You see how much is the risk. If patient is normotensive, that is normotension with normal RV, secondary prevention you do, that is anticoagulation alone and IBC filter, that's it. If patient is normotension with RV hypokinesis, then individualize the therapy. If patient is hypotension, primary therapy you give anticoagulants, thrombolysis, embolectomy, and by catheter or surgical method. Antithrombotic therapy for DVT and PE. First is unfractionated heparin. Unfractionated heparin 80 units per kg bolus, followed by 18 units per kg per hour infusion. Then other options are low molecular weight heparin, dalteparin, enoxaparin, factor 10A inhibitors like fondaparinux, target specific anticoagulants, rivaroxaban, apixaban, dabigatran, and thrombolytic therapy. So from emergency medicine point of view, the exam questions are clinical aids in diagnosing pulmonary embolism, where you will write about the clinical features, ECG findings, USG findings, and mention all the scores. Integrated approach to diagnosis and treatment of pulmonary embolism, again you will mention all the diagnosing aids, that is clinical features, scores, and treatment part what we have discussed. Risk factors for venous thromboembolism which is discussed, and diagnostic testing for venous thromboembolism, and scores for PE. That is all what we have discussed. Thank you.